Betrayed at work, I took revenge on my boss. The boardroom was silent except for the sound of papers sliding across mahogany. My former boss, Gavin Thorne, stared at the documents in front of him. Tax fraud, embezzlement, falsified contracts. His face had gone from red to white in the span of 30 seconds. The federal investigators flanking him weren't smiling. "Mr. Thorne," one of them said quietly, "we need you to initial each page." His hand trembled as he picked up the pen. He looked up at me once, just once, across the conference table where I sat with the company's legal team. I'd been promoted to his position 3 weeks earlier. I should have felt guilty, should have felt some twinge of remorse for the man who'd mentored me, who'd brought me into this company, who'd promised me a future. But after what he did to destroy my career and steal credit for my work, after he tried to bury me so deep I'd never resurface, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Sign it," I said evenly, "or they'll add obstruction to the charges." He signed every page, and with each signature, 5 years of lies crumbled around him. You're probably wondering how it got this far, how a junior analyst ended up taking down the most feared executive in the company, how I went from being his protege to the person who sent him to federal prison. Let me tell you. But that wasn't where it started. My name is Isaiah Cross, and 4 years ago, I thought I'd landed my dream job. I was 26, fresh out of business school, hired as a senior analyst at Meridian Financial Partners in Chicago. Meridian was one of those mid-sized consulting firms that punched above its weight. Aggressive, hungry, willing to take risks that bigger firms wouldn't touch. The man who hired me was Gavin Thorne, Vice President of Strategic Development, 42 years old, charismatic, connected, and brilliant at client relations. He had a reputation for turning around failing companies and closing deals others couldn't. "You're exactly what we need," Gavin told me during my final interview. "Young, sharp, hungry. I see a lot of myself in you, Isaiah. Stick with me, learn the game, and you'll be running your own department in 5 years." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was offering mentorship, opportunity, and a clear path upward. My girlfriend Simone was thrilled when I got the offer. "This is it," she said, hugging me tight in our cramped apartment. "This is your shot to build something real." She worked as a social worker, helping at-risk kids navigate the system. We'd been together since college, 8 years of scraping by on student loans and entry-level salaries. This job meant stability, maybe even a future where we could afford to get married, buy a house, start the life we'd been planning. I threw myself into the work, 70-hour weeks, weekend strategy sessions, late-night client calls. Gavin demanded excellence, and I delivered. Within 6 months, I'd led 3 major turnaround projects that saved our clients millions. Gavin praised me in meetings, told senior leadership I was his secret weapon, and promised bigger opportunities were coming. "Secrets protect people," he told me once over drinks after closing a deal. "The less everyone knows about how we win, the better. Trust the process, Isaiah. Trust me." I should have heard the warning in those words, but I was young and ambitious and desperate to prove myself, so I trusted him. That was my first mistake. The project that changed everything was the Hartwell Industries account. Hartwell was a manufacturing company on the verge of bankruptcy. Outdated processes, terrible management, hemorrhaging money. They came to Meridian as a last resort. If we couldn't save them, they'd liquidate. Gavin assigned me as the lead analyst. He said, "This is your chance to shine. Full autonomy. Build the turnaround plan, present it to the client, and close the deal. I'll supervise, but this is your show." I spent 3 months on that project. I embedded myself at Hartwell's facilities, interviewed every department head, audited their supply chain, and identified the core problems. Then I designed a comprehensive restructuring plan, operational efficiency improvements, strategic partnerships, a phased workforce transition that would save jobs while cutting costs. It was the best work I'd ever done. When I presented it to Gavin in his office, I could see he was impressed. "This is excellent," he said, flipping through the presentation deck. "Really top-tier strategy. You've got a future in this business, Isaiah." "Thanks. Should we schedule the client presentation for next week?" "Let me review it with senior leadership first. I want to make sure we're positioning this right. Give me a few days." I handed over my files, feeling proud and confident. This was it. The project that would establish me as more than just Gavin's protege. The project that would make my career. 3 days later, I was called into a conference room. The entire senior leadership team was there, along with the Hartwell CEO and CFO. Gavin was standing at the front, with a presentation on the screen behind him. My presentation. "Gentlemen," Gavin began, "I'm excited to share the turnaround strategy we've developed for Hartwell Industries." I sat there frozen as he walked through my plan slide by slide, my research, my analysis, my recommendations. He presented it all as his own work. Not once did he mention my name. Not once did he acknowledge I'd spent 3 months building this. When he finished, the Hartwell executives were effusive with praise. "This is exactly what we needed," the CEO said. "Gavin, you saved our company." Our company CFO nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Gavin. This is why you're indispensable to Meridian." After the meeting, I caught Gavin in the hallway. My heart was pounding with rage and confusion. "That was my presentation, my plan. Why didn't you credit me?" Gavin looked at me with something like pity. "Isaiah, you're still learning how this business works. The client needs to see senior leadership driving strategy. If they knew a junior analyst did the work, they'd question the value we're providing. I'm protecting the relationship and protecting you." "Protecting me by stealing my work?" His expression hardened. "Watch your tone. You work for me. Everything you create belongs to the company, to this team. That's how hierarchy works. You want credit? Keep grinding, keep learning, and maybe in 5 years, you'll be the one presenting." He walked away, leaving me standing in that hallway, understanding for the first time what I really was to him. Not a protege, a resource to be exploited. That night, I told Simone everything. She was furious. "You have to report him. Go to HR. Go to his boss." And say what? That my VP presented work I did for him? That's literally his job description. I'm the analyst, he's the executive. That's how corporate America works. Then quit. Find another company that values you. I wanted to, but I'd signed a 2-year non-compete clause. If I left Meridian, I couldn't work for any competitor or client in the consulting industry for 24 months. Gavin had made sure of that when I joined. I was trapped, and he knew it. Over the next 6 months, it happened 3 more times. I'd develop a strategy, hand it over to Gavin, and watch him present it as his own work. Each time, he'd give me the same justification. I'm protecting the relationship. Trust the process. My name never appeared in client presentations. My contributions were never acknowledged to senior leadership. And when promotion season came around, I was passed over while Gavin received a substantial raise and bonus, compensation tied directly to the success of projects I'd actually created. I started documenting everything. Every email I sent Gavin with attached files. Every meeting where I presented ideas. Every project timeline showing my role as lead analyst. I didn't know what I'd do with the evidence. I just knew I needed it. Then came the Whitmore account, and everything exploded. Whitmore Technologies was our biggest client, a software company looking to expand internationally. Gavin put me on the project, same as before. I spent 4 months building an expansion strategy, researching markets, identifying partnership opportunities. The plan was ambitious but sound. It would require significant capital investment, but the ROI projections were solid. I handed it to Gavin for review. 2 weeks later, I was called into a meeting with Meridian CEO, a woman named Danielle Kemp. "Isaiah, we need to discuss the Whitmore project. Is there a problem?" There's a significant problem. Gavin brought concerns to me about your work. He says your expansion plan is financially reckless, that you've massively overestimated ROI and underestimated risks. He's worried that if we present this to Whitmore, we'll damage our credibility and possibly expose ourselves to liability. I felt my stomach drop. That's not true. The numbers are conservative. I can show you my research. Gavin already showed me his analysis of your work. It's concerning, Isaiah. He's recommending we remove you from the project and have him rebuild the strategy from scratch. He's lying. He's stolen my work on every major project in the past year, and now he's sabotaging me so he can... That's a very serious allegation. Danielle's voice went cold. Do you have evidence of this alleged theft? I hesitated. I had documentation, but it was all on my work laptop, which
was company property they could seize at any moment. If I accused Gavin directly, he'd bury me before I could prove anything. I need time to gather... Isaiah, I'm going to be direct. Gavin is one of our most valuable executives. He's brought in millions in revenue. You're a talented analyst, but you're also junior and still learning. If you're going to accuse him of professional misconduct, you better have ironclad proof. Otherwise, you're the one who's going to face consequences for making false allegations. I left that meeting knowing I had been outplayed. Gavin had anticipated that I might push back eventually, so he'd poisoned the well first, painting me as reckless and unreliable before I could expose him. That night, I sat in my apartment with Simone, staring at my laptop, trying to figure out my next move. You have to quit, she said again. This is destroying you. I can't. The non-compete. Screw the non-compete. Get a job outside consulting. Start over. Anything is better than letting him keep abusing you. She was right, but I wasn't ready to run. Not yet. Because I just remembered something. Something Gavin had told me a year ago over drinks, in a moment of careless arrogance. The beauty of consulting is that everyone's too busy watching clients to watch internal books. As long as revenue looks good, nobody asks questions. At the time, I thought he was talking about the industry generally, but now I wondered if he'd been confessing something specific. That was the night I stopped trusting and started planning. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I opened my laptop and started digging through every file I'd worked on over the past 18 months. Not just my projects, everything. Company financial records I had access to as a senior analyst, expense reports, client billing statements, internal communications about revenue projections. I wasn't looking for stolen credit anymore. I was looking for something bigger. It took 3 weeks of late-night searching, cross-referencing documents, and following paper trails. But I found it. Gavin Thorne wasn't just stealing credit for my work, he was committing fraud. Here's what I discovered. Gavin had been inflating project costs to clients, then pocketing the difference. He'd create fake vendor invoices, submit them for reimbursement, and route the money to shell companies he controlled. He'd been doing it for at least 3 years, stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the real crime was how he'd hidden it. He'd been attributing successful project outcomes to his own strategic leadership, while blaming any cost overruns on junior analysts, including me. When clients questioned expenses, he'd throw us under the bus, claiming we'd mismanaged budgets. I'd been a scapegoat, his cover story, the person he blamed every time he needed to explain away his theft. The evidence was buried deep in financial records that most people wouldn't bother to cross-reference, but I was methodical. I built a spreadsheet tracking every suspicious expense, every fake vendor, every discrepancy between what clients were charged and what Meridian actually paid. The total fraud? Over $800,000. I sat in my apartment at 2 a.m. staring at the spreadsheet, realizing I had enough evidence to destroy Gavin completely. Not just his career, his freedom. This was criminal fraud, federal charges, prison time. But I had a problem. If I went to Meridian's leadership, Gavin would know it came from me. He'd claim I'd fabricated evidence out of spite. He'd use his influence to discredit me before anyone took my accusations seriously. I'd seen him do it to others. I needed an airtight strategy, something he couldn't see coming until it was too late. I called in sick for 3 days and built my plan. First, I needed to secure the evidence where Gavin couldn't delete it. I copied everything to an encrypted external hard drive, not a flash drive that could be lost, but a password-protected external drive I kept in a safety deposit box. That became my symbolic object, my insurance policy. Second, I needed to establish my own credibility before making accusations. I started building relationships with other analysts who'd been burned by Gavin. There were 3, Claudia, Omar, and Wesley. All people who'd worked under him and been blamed when things went wrong. I approached each of them carefully, asking vague questions about their experiences. All 3 had stories similar to mine: stolen credit, public scapegoating, career damage. But none of them had hard evidence. "He's untouchable," Claudia told me over coffee. "I tried to complain to HR about him taking credit for my work. They told me I was being territorial and needed to be a team player. 2 months later, I was passed over for promotion." "What if we had proof?" I asked carefully. "Real evidence that he's not just taking credit, but committing actual fraud." Her eyes narrowed. "What kind of evidence?" I showed her a sample from my spreadsheet, just enough to prove I was serious, not enough to expose my full case. "Holy shit," she whispered. "How did you find this?" "I'm good at connecting dots, and I've been connecting them for weeks." "What's your plan?" "I need to know I'm not alone. If I expose him, he'll try to destroy me. But if there are multiple people willing to testify about his pattern of behavior, it's harder to dismiss as one disgruntled employee." "I'm in," Claudia said without hesitation. "That bastard ruined my shot at partnership. I want him gone." Omar and Wesley agreed too. We formed a quiet alliance, meeting outside work, building our case together. But we still had a problem. Internal reporting would be too slow and too easily manipulated. We needed outside intervention, someone with authority who couldn't be influenced by Gavin's corporate connections. That's when I had the idea that would change everything. I contacted the IRS and the FBI's white-collar crime division anonymously through their fraud reporting hotlines. I didn't provide names or specifics, just enough to suggest there might be significant financial irregularities at a mid-sized consulting firm in Chicago. Then I waited. 3 months later, just as I was starting to think nothing would happen, federal investigators showed up at Meridian's headquarters with a warrant to audit financial records. The company went into panic mode. Danielle Kemp called an emergency meeting. Everyone was questioned about their project finances, their expense reports, their knowledge of accounting procedures. Gavin played it cool. He was charming, cooperative, confident. "I'm sure this is just routine," he told the team. "We've got nothing to hide." But I knew better, because I'd already been interviewed by the investigators, privately, at their request, and I'd handed over everything. The spreadsheet, the fake invoices, the shell company registrations, the pattern of fraud spanning 3 years. And I'd made sure to frame it carefully. I wasn't a vindictive employee. I was a concerned analyst who discovered irregularities during routine project audits and felt obligated to report them. The investigators loved me. They saw me as a credible witness, someone with detailed knowledge and no apparent motive to fabricate evidence. Gavin never saw it coming. The investigation took 4 months. During that time, Gavin continued business as usual, stealing credit, manipulating reports, treating junior staff like disposable resources. But I could see him starting to sweat. The investigators kept requesting more documents. They interviewed more employees. They brought in forensic accountants to trace money flows. Claudia, Omar, Wesley, and I were all interviewed multiple times. We corroborated each other's stories about Gavin's pattern of taking credit and scapegoating staff. We provided examples of projects where costs didn't match billings. The noose was tightening. Then came the day everything broke. I was at my desk when I saw federal agents walk into the office. They went straight to Gavin's corner office. Through the glass walls, I watched them hand him documents. His face went from confident to pale in seconds. Danielle Kemp was called in. The company's legal counsel arrived within minutes. The entire floor went silent, everyone pretending to work while watching the drama unfold. An hour later, Gavin was escorted out by the agents. Not in handcuffs, not yet, but clearly not voluntarily leaving. The next morning, Meridian's leadership called an all-hands meeting. We've been informed of serious financial irregularities involving Gavin Thorne. He's been placed on immediate administrative leave pending the outcome of a federal investigation. We're cooperating fully. The room erupted in whispers. Gavin had been untouchable, and now he was gone. But I wasn't done. Over the next 2 weeks, more details emerged. Gavin had been indicted on multiple charges: wire fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement, and falsifying business records. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutors had everything they needed. Meridian's board hired an independent forensic firm to audit all of Gavin's projects. They discovered the full scope of his fraud, not just the money he'd stolen, but the systematic way he'd blamed junior staff to cover his tracks. Claudia, Omar, Wesley, and I were all vindicated. Our performance reviews were corrected. The projects Gavin had claimed as his own were properly reattributed to us. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for.
Danielle called me into her office. She looked exhausted, like she'd aged 5 years and 2 weeks. "Isaiah, I owe you an apology," she said. "When you tried to tell me about Gavin, I didn't listen. I chose to believe the executive over the analyst. That was wrong." "Yes, it was." She flinched at my directness. "We've reviewed all your work, the Hartwell turnaround, the international expansion strategies, the operational efficiency projects. They were all yours. Gavin did almost none of the actual analysis. He just presented your work and took credit." "I know. The board would like to offer you Gavin's position, Vice President of Strategic Development, effective immediately." I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. The vindication, the promotion, the justice of taking the job of the man who'd tried to destroy me. But now that it was happening, I felt something unexpected. Emptiness. Because none of this fixed the year I'd lost, the confidence Gavin had chipped away, the nights Simone had held me while I questioned my own worth. "I'll take the position," I said, "but I have conditions." "Name them." "Full transparency on all project attribution. Junior analysts get credit for their work in client presentations and internal reviews. No more of this senior leadership must front everything bullshit. If someone does the work, their name goes on it." "Agreed." "And Claudia, Omar, and Wesley all get promotions. They were victims of the same system that protected Gavin. They deserve recognition." Danielle nodded. "I'll make it happen." The trial came 6 months later. I was the prosecution's key witness. I sat on the stand for 3 days, walking the jury through the spreadsheets, the fake invoices, the pattern of fraud. Gavin's defense attorney tried to paint me as a bitter employee seeking revenge for legitimate workplace criticism. But the evidence was too strong. The numbers didn't lie. The jury convicted him on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay full restitution, over $1 million, including fines and penalties. I was in the courtroom when the sentence was read. Gavin looked at me once, his expression a mix of hatred and disbelief. He never thought it had in me to fight back. He'd assumed I'd just take the abuse and move on. He'd learned the hard way that underestimating people is dangerous. 2 years later, I'm still at Meridian, VP of Strategic Development, leading a team of 20 analysts, building a culture where people get credit for their work and junior staff aren't treated as disposable resources. Simone and I got married last year. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. We bought a house in the suburbs, started talking about kids. The career I thought Gavin had destroyed, it's thriving. Clients request me by name. Junior analysts want to work on my team.
The industry knows me as someone who turned around not just companies, but an entire corporate culture. But I'd be lying if I said revenge fixed everything. I still have moments where I doubt myself, where I hear Gavin's voice telling me I'm not good enough, that I need to trust the process, that I'm just a junior analyst who should be grateful for scraps. Therapy helps, so does Simone. So does seeing Claudia, Omar, and Wesley all thriving in their new roles, no longer trapped under someone who stole their work. Last month, I got a letter from Gavin. He's 2 years into a sentence at a minimum security federal prison. The letter was strange, part apology, part justification, part plea for understanding. Isaiah, I know you hate me. You have every right to. But I want you to understand that I never saw myself as the villain. I genuinely believed I was teaching you how the business world works. The strong take credit, the weak get blamed. That's just reality. What I didn't realize until it was too late was that I'd become the kind of person I used to despise. I'd started out like you, hungry, idealistic, convinced that hard work and merit mattered. But somewhere along the way, I got twisted up in ego and ambition. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you did the right thing. You stopped me from doing more damage, and you proved that integrity still matters, even in a world that often rewards the opposite. Good luck with your career. You earned everything you have. Gavin. I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and haven't looked at it since. Because here's what I learned. Revenge doesn't fix pain. It measures it. It quantifies the damage and demands equal consequences, but it doesn't make you whole again. What makes you whole is building something better than what was destroyed, creating a team where people are valued, mentoring junior analysts the way I wish I'd been mentored, proving that success doesn't require stepping on people to reach the top. Last week, a young analyst on my team, a kid named Bryce, 24 years old, sharp as hell, came to me with a brilliant turnaround strategy for a struggling client. It was exactly the kind of work that would make me look good if I presented it as my own. This is excellent, I told him. You're going to present this to the client next week. I'll be there to support you, but this is your work. Your name goes on every slide. Bryce looked shocked. Really? I thought you'd want to front it since you're the VP. No. You did the work. You get the credit. That's how it works on my team. He walked out of my office grinning. And in that moment, I realized something. Gavin had tried to teach me that the strong take credit and the weak get blamed, but he was wrong. The strong give credit. The weak steal it. I chose to be strong. Justice always finds its way. I'm Zach, and this was another true tale of revenge. You think that was wild? Wait till you hear what happened when a woman discovered her business partner, who was also her sister, had been embezzling from their family company for years. That story drops next week, and trust me, the betrayal cuts deeper than anything you've heard. What would you have done in Isaiah's place? Would you have fought back or just found another job? Comment below. I read every one. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted at work, share this video. Maybe it'll give someone else the courage to stand up too. Some debts aren't paid with money. They're paid with truth.